Hello, everybody. I'm Uncle Lombardi, and welcome to every episode of SMG4 Season 1 Reviewed. Now, SMG4 holds a special place in my heart, as I fondly and vividly remember spending weeknights just on my Kindle in my bed. Everybody else is asleep, watching these kinds of videos. And most of the videos that I've watched were from about 2012 to 2014, I'd say. Of course, a few past that, but really anything past 2016 or 2017, I have not seen. Of course, I've heard about some of these episodes, and I've heard about, the characters, and I've seen snippets and whatnot, but I haven't, sat down and watched an SMG4 episode really in about 4 years. So I kind of wanted to do this review series to both catch up on these episodes and kind of review them as I go along, so I can form an opinion on this sort of stuff. To dip my toes into review water, or whatever it is. A lot of people do think one of either two things, that the newer episodes are either really good or really bad, so I kind of wanted to see what my opinion is here. And before we go to the newer episodes, I kind of wanted to do these older episodes, to kind of establish a standard, almost. But, yeah. So basically, this episode is going to be what the title says. Every episode of SMG4 Season 1 reviewed. But how am I going to do that, you ask? Well, my friend, I have a solution. So every episode is going to have its own little slide thingy. The top left corner will have the date, the upper part will have the episode number, as well as the episode title, and a brief description of what happens in the episode. Then throughout the slide, we'll have the highlight of the episode, a part of the episode which I really liked, or whatever. This can be anything. How a setting is used, how characters develop, or whatever, or just a really, really funny joke. Over on that part, we have a random quote from the episode, and right over there we have a random object from the episode. Something to identify these by. So, throughout each episode review, at some point I'll go over the episode and what I think of it, and notable parts and things worth talking about, and then, at some point, I'll signal that I'll signal what the episode's rating is, basically. And the rating can be one of three things. Either a good episode, an episode that I found really enjoyable, really, for any number of reasons. Really funny, had an interesting plot or whatever. Anything I like, basically. A meh episode, which has either good or bad elements that kind of both balance each other out, or I just don't feel strongly about the episode either way. Or we have the dreaded Scum 64 episode. These are episodes which, by judging by, how I talk about them, I think are bad episodes. Episodes that I just don't really like watching. Either they're not funny, they're annoying, have a really stupid plot, or boring. Anything that just makes an episode enjoyable to sit through, or just not good. So, first off, these are just my opinions on these episodes. Don't take them as fact, and don't take them as a personal attack on people who like episodes that I dislike, or vice versa. It's fine that we all have different opinions on these kinds of things, and I think it's really cool that we can kind of have discussions about what we like in these episodes and what we don't, and how much we value certain aspects of episodes. It's really nice. Just don't be rude about it. That's all. Also, with that, my opinions on these episodes don't reflect the creators of the episodes. If there's a bad episode, I don't think of the people who made it as bad. You know? This is a lot of the criticism coming from here is just from a fan who just wants these episodes to be better, basically. And hey, a lot of the criticism is also positive and whatnot. I like telling people that, hey, keep this up. These episodes, do this. This worked in this episode. But yeah, those are just some of the disclaimers before this. And with all that being said, let's get things started. Episode 1. The cake is a lie. After arriving at the castle, Mario finds out there was no cake. So my favorite part of this episode would probably have to be Mario's interaction with Toad in this episode. That kind of becomes one of the first mainstays of the Super Mario 64 blooper genre, Mario being annoying towards Toad, and I kind of like that this episode kind of kicks that off a bit. I also really like Toad's quote that he says to Mario, trying to convince him that the cake isn't actually real. But is this episode a nice fresh cake, or one that's been left out for about 5 days and is kinda stale now? I'd say that this is a good episode. It is a bit dull to start this series off with, but I think it is a good job at just a really simple, almost primitive introduction to this kind of series of episodes. And it's definitely interesting to see what would later become these episodes, that they kind of start off this simple, almost. Overall, it's an enjoyable episode for what it is. Nothing groundbreaking, certainly not, but it's simple, and it does its job at introducing this series. Episode 2. Dreams. Mario eats mushrooms and has strange dreams. So my favorite part of this would probably be how the settings are used in this episode, as this is really the first time we see something outside of Peach's castle in an episode. And I think it is done pretty well, like this episode. It does have a really light plot here, but then again, this is the first time that this happens, so I'm willing to let it slide there a bit. I do enjoy the Bob-omb Battlefield textures that happen when Mario is dreaming there, and also Yoshi's quote of saying, "Oh, I have to go now, I have to go sell drugs to little kids." That one was pretty funny. Overall, this is a good episode, and a good, real starter episode to, kick things off a bit. Episode 3. Flashbacks. Several side characters have flashbacks. My favorite parts of this episode would probably be the flashbacks of Yoshi, because they take place in the different games, such as Mario Kart and Smash Bros. Those I found pretty entertaining. I also really liked the line when Mario is talking to Bowser about bosses that he's fought, and he refers to the Koopalings as "your demented children." That one got a pretty good laugh out of me. Overall, I'd say this is a good episode. It uses other scenes well, other scenes in other games well, and that becomes kind of a mainstay in several of these episodes later on, and I think this episode does those pretty well. Episode 4. Time Freeze. Mario stops time and tries to fix it. My favorite part of this episode would probably be the whole ending sequence with Mario trying to figure out what could cause this time-stopping thingy that's happening. The strategy guy talking to Mario, and the ending gag of him breaking the clock again. This kind of series does that a lot, and while it doesn't work at certain times later on in the series, I do think that this one, it is funny enough to not be stupid or whatever. I do think that this is a good episode. It has actual stakes in it, and it's neat to see Mario face a dilemma for the first time in a series. Episode 5, Mario's Guide to Defeating Bowser. Mario gives tips on how to beat Bowser. The part I liked the most would probably be the hacking gag. It was funny seeing huge Bowser and Moonjump Mario quote-unquote fight. However, that's the only part I really liked here, as I think this episode belongs in the meh category. It's an interesting enough concept, but the nature of these kinds of jokes is you normally know how it's going to play out. When Mario says Bowser hates Justin Bieber music, you know how he's going to react when Mario starts playing it. When Mario tells you not to touch Bowser's tail, you know that something's going to go wrong when Mario touches Bowser's tail. When Mario says to bribe Bowser, you know that Mario's going to bribe Bowser. It gets pretty predictable after a while, actually, and yeah, it's entertaining. It does get old. Episode 6, Blooper Problems. Lakitu goes over problems faced when making bloopers. First of all, it is kind of weird having a behind-the-scenes themed episode this early on in the series. It's not bad or anything, I just find it kind of odd. You just kind of need the setting established more, give us more time with it before you do an episode so heavily based on fourth wall breaks. Anyways, my favorite parts here include Mario dressed as Lakitu and him subsequently saying he got it from a hobo. That part I found pretty funny. Also, fun fact, this is the first episode with a dedicated intro. And thankfully, that intro is used on a good episode. The fight scene is drawn on for a bit with King Bob-omb, like with a lot of fight scenes in this era of SMG4, but overall, I think this episode is done well. Episode 7. Just like any other day. Mario is bored, so he travels around the worlds. My favorite parts of this episode would probably be the parts with the music, as I enjoyed those a bit. Also, the Snowman's Land part is one of the first sections of the series which the background music doesn't interfere with the in-game music. That was nice to listen to. There are also several pretty good gags throughout this episode, like with Bowser's twin named Bowser, and Mario yelling Jeebus was funny as well. Overall, I'll give this one a good, as while the story isn't really here, the jokes and situations are interesting enough to hold my attention throughout the episode. Episode 8, Quest for a Console. Mario looks for the newest console, the 3DS. This is one of the first episodes to have a main focus on Mario changing games, as there's a lot of transitions from Mario 64 to Paper Mario to Mario Kart. These transitions probably have to be my favorite part, as they're so smooth and work so well. From the castle to Royal Raceway to Rainbow Road and Paper Mario to DK's Jungle Parkway and Hazy Maze Cave, it all makes for a very visually interesting episode. And I do think this one deserves a good. Also, wow, the 3DS has been out for how long? Episode 9. Have you seen this polygon? Mario loses his hand. One thing I can say about this episode is that the premise is very, very interesting. Having a character lose a body part isn't something we don't really see, so right off the bat this episode has my attention. It manages to keep it too, as there's a lot of good moments here. The fight with Master Hand is interesting enough, as well as the strategy guide returning and the gag with Peach, where Mario throws her and you can hear an explosion off screen. Obviously, it's because she's modded onto one of those quirk boxes, but it's still funny to hear that, as well as for it to not even be addressed. This is definitely a good episode, but I do think more could have been done with the character loses their hand plot. It does manage to squeeze some decent jokes out of it, but I don't know, it's just not as much as I would prefer. Episode 10, A Painful Day in the Paper World. After destroying Peach's castle, Mario explores the Paper Toad Town. So, this episode starts off good enough, with Mario being at his house, he gets a letter, and the party sequence at the castle was kind of fun too. Another part I liked was the interaction between Mario and Merlin, as it was fun and charming. However, I don't think I felt the same way throughout the rest of the episode. Unfortunately, we have our first Scum 64 episode. I found a vast majority of the content here pretty boring and not super funny. The train gag was alright, but the aftermath of it kind of dragged on for way too long than it needed to. When the same punchline happens, where Mario wakes up again from something hitting him, it's even less funny. More than that, however, it feels like a lot of this episode just doesn't make use of the setting all that well. When you get down to it, Mario goes from his house to the castle, causes havoc, and then just wanders around Toad Town, annoying people. It's not a particularly interesting sequence of events, and the only things that we get that's, exclusive to Paper Mario is maybe the Mario house and Merlin, but that's about it. I can get Mario annoying other people in other episodes. Many others, in fact. What does this episode bring to the table? It's only 6 minutes long too, so we don't get a lot of time in this unique setting. Overall, while this isn't a horrible episode, it is pretty bland in my view. Episode 11. An Adventurous Drive. Mario goes kart racing. Now, this is an episode that uses its settings well. Unlike before, Mario actually does things that can't be done in Super Mario 64, most notably, drive. Other than that, this is a good episode. Lots of the gags work here, such as the Kalahari Desert section, the Castle Spike joke, or the cutaways. I also found the callback to Quest for a Console interesting with the Luigi face joke at Rainbow Road. This is how you do an episode with unique settings right. Episode 12. A Day Without Peach. Peach leaves Mario to be in charge of the castle while she is on vacation. This is a fun episode as we get a lot of Mario and Toad interactions where they don't hate each other. It's nice to see them be friends and to have Mario get Toad to loosen up a bit. It's a favorite character dynamic of mine where a crazy character teams up with an ordinary character. And this episode has a lot of jokes to it as well. My favorite might have to be the renovation that's done at the castle, but also I liked the negative color part, and we get party rockers at some point here. I also really enjoyed Tick Tick and the foreshadowing we get with him. At first I thought it was just a one-off joke, but no, he actually ends up destroying the castle in the end. An amazingly funny episode that delves into a really, really neat character dynamic. Episode 13. Darkness Takes Over. After buying a new cannon, Mario breaks the sun. This episode, like others throughout this season, feels like wasted potential. The idea of Mario breaking the sun and having everything dark seems really cool, until the episode doesn't do anything with it. A joke or two about Mario running into things would, at the very least, be interesting. The plot takes a while to get going, and it feels like the portal element was just an afterthought. But any momentum this episode had, as weak as it was, came to a screeching halt when it gets to the Pokemon segment. 2.5 minutes of just filler. Nothing is really interesting about the dialogue, the story, or even the gameplay. It's just Pokemon gameplay with Mario making the occasional stupid remark. It lowers an episode that was already weak and boring right into Scum 64 territory. I did enjoy the Mario Party part, but that's really the only thing I liked here. Episode 14. Charming Peach. Toad helps Mario in his efforts to woo Peach. This is another Mario Toad episode, and while I don't think it's as good as A Day Without Peach, it's still a solid episode. It can get repetitive because you know that Mario's gonna mess things up, but it keeps things funny and interesting. Also, we get Naked Mario's debut. Episode 15. Luigi's Payback. Luigi tries to get rid of Mario. Fun fact, this episode is the first one to use voice clips. Also, while they aren't what people really consider to be recolors, those appear here too. It really gives this episode a more modern feel than the ones before it. And thankfully, it's a good episode. This thrives off of slapstick humor, with Bowser and Luigi trying and failing to kill Mario. The Jeopardy gag is fun, the big one is fun. Overall, it's a really entertaining episode. Episode 16. Master of Fail Disguises. After being banned from Peach's party, Mario uses disguises to try and sneak in. This has a very fun idea, with Mario trying to sneak into a party he really wants to get into. It's also done fairly well, with some clever jokes and funny moments. Mario dressing up as a flag, the Toad jumping joke, as well as others make this pretty funny. And while the ending is predictable, of course he misses the party, it doesn't bring down a good episode. Episode 17. Mario Quits. Mario quits. So the part here I liked the most would have to be the interviews, especially the Darth Vader one. The concept is fun too, but unfortunately, it's not done in an interesting way. Lots of the episode focuses on Lakitu trying to find replacements for Mario, and not Mario being free from his job. Plus, we don't get a lot of Mario not working at all. It's just a few very short scenes of him at his house. He tries to save Peach, but he says he's too depressed to do so. It'd be believable if we got literally anything more than a couple seconds of screen time at his house. It does have its moments, however, so I'll give it a meh rating. Episode 18. A Random Day. A collection of bloopers. This, I feel, is a precursor to the Singmanar videos, as it shares a similar format, but it's still the really primitive Season 1 format. I found a lot of what's here to be funny enough to be good. The Peter joke, Mario going to heaven, him just randomly yelling abortion, it's a neat change in the episode format, and I think it's good. Episode 19. Losing your N64. Mario breaks Luigi's N64 and has to find a new one. I found this episode to be boring, mostly. I did like the Nintendo HQ part as well as the breaking the N64 sequence, but a lot of it was just boring. Luigi traveling back in time I found to be just a dumb cop-out solution to the plot. This just screams meh to me. Episode 20. Bowser the Unhappy Fat Turtle. Mario tries to cheer up Bowser. Okay, I have a lot to say about this episode, so for starters, I did like how this episode focuses on Bowser more. Side characters are cool, and having episodes focus on them are even cooler. Also, some of the jokes, specifically Mario thinking Bowser died. That got a good laugh out of me, but I had a lot of other problems with this episode. We have a neat dynamic between Mario and Bowser, but Bowser's character is confusing. I'm talking about him running away in that whole driving scene. He switches from hating Mario's guts to liking him and wanting to come back with no real motivation. During Mario's attempts to cheer him up, we don't have an inclination that he secretly appreciated it. He just looked annoyed at the whole thing. The character confusion really feels like a symptom of another issue. I don't know how I should feel about Bowser or how he's being treated. Am I supposed to feel sorry for him and this story is supposed to end off on a heartwarming note? Or is the joke that Bowser is just so sad and melodramatic that he can't be happy or enjoy Mario's presence? On top of that, this episode isn't funny outside of a couple decent jokes. It all makes for an unenjoyable, confusing Scum64 episode. Episode 21. Enter X. A mysterious character steals Mario's body where he has to get it back. This episode is a really good one. As while it's not the funniest in the world, it keeps my attention through its plot. Not to say there aren't funny moments, however. The opening, the Mama Effer voice clip, the killing montage, those are some good points here. There's also some nice production, with Mario's brain looking neat with it being all glitchy and whatnot, as well as having the background music not clash with the in-game music. It makes for a very compelling story and one that I'd consider to be pretty damn good. Episode 22. The Land That Never Was. Mario gets stuck at a land that never was. I'll just say it right out the gate, this is a meh. It's a really dull episode where Mario just goes around this new setting. Nothing I feel is done with it outside of how he fixes this problem. I did enjoy Mario cheating in the race. Getting kicked out because of that is pretty clever, but other than that, it's a very forgettable episode. Episode 23. The Visitor. During a rainy day, someone stays at the castle. This feels like Enter X, with how we have a new villain to work with here. It even has its own death scenes of Luigi and other characters. However, it's done well enough for me to consider it good. I found another darker episode to be entertaining. It's also cool how it rains throughout the entire episode. Episode 24, Account Loss. A shady figure tries to convince Mario to give access to SMG4's account. So, this is the first episode in which SMG4 makes an appearance. I feel this episode is a turning point in the series, as before this, a lot of episodes were just Super Mario 64 bloopers, as in just having the Mario characters do things, but now it's more SMG4 focused. I didn't really expect that to be the case this deep into the first season, but here we are. This is definitely a good episode, as it uses YouTube as an interesting plot point. I also found it cool how the account isn't only related to YouTube, but to the entire world that they're in. It's nice to see the series really take an identity now as something other than Super Mario 64 funny videos. Episode 25, Restoring Normality. Mario breaks a very important crystal and tries to get things back to normal. This is a very interesting episode as we get a lot of weirdness here. It's probably my favorite part of the whole thing. Some great jokes like Mario yelling "trees away" were funny too. The ending does feel rushed, however, but it doesn't really take a lot away from a good episode. Episode 26, Mario at the Olympic Games. Lakitu trains Mario for the Olympics. This episode has a lot of things going for it, most notably the relationship between Mario and Lakitu. It's nice to see Lakitu take a trainer role here, who wants to see Mario succeed. We also get a funny training montage, which is typical for this kind of story. I liked this episode as well as the whole sequence of the actual games. Overall, solid. Episode 27, Brother Wars. Wario drives a wedge between the two Mario brothers. Wario makes his first major appearance in this episode, and it works out well for him. It's a nice episode, and the conflict is done well. I really liked both the plot and the battlefield scenes. If I could choose one thing I didn't like, it's that Wario has no reason to reveal himself in the end. Maybe he's just tired of it all? But then he should have known that going into this plan. Whatever, it doesn't ruin a really cool plot. Episode 28, Italian Kidnapping. Mario gets kidnapped and needs his friends to help. There's lots of amazing jokes here, my favorite of which might be Mario's attempts to escape. Other than that, this episode is consistently funny and we get an actually intense plot. I can tell a lot was put into this episode as the green screen effects are actually really nice. If you can't tell, this is a very good episode. Episode 29, Time Travel Tells. Mario travels back in time after messing with EGAD's lab. The plot here gets started very quickly, which I like. Getting straight into the action is almost always a good thing. Mario's montage of him having fun with the chiptune Scatman in the background was nice as well. But my favorite part of this good episode would have to be the Idea Man. Mario accidentally kills him, and because of that, his world ceases to exist. It's a very, very cool premise, and how Mario solves it is even better, by shooting one-up mushrooms at the funeral, which in and of itself is a funny sequence. Yet another episode I would absolutely watch again. Episode 30, The Blooper Competition. SMG4 competes in the annual blooper competition to try and beat Mario 54321. The blooper competition, I think, embodies Golden Age SMG4 in my view, as we get that new font, a new kind of story with focus on SMG4, and a whole load of different things. I really liked a lot of the jokes here. Mario talking to the camera, and SMG4 presumably celebrating the fact that it's 9/11 out of context. It's a funny episode, and one I think is absolutely good. We get a similar story to Mario at the Olympics, where a character mentors another for a competition, except this time it's Mario doing the training. Now, obviously SMG4 doesn't win the competition. I expected that, but I found the ending to be really stupid. However, it doesn't take much away from this episode, as it has a lot of strengths and cool things, like the focus on Gmod for the latter half. Episode 31, 4 Clones, 1 Italian. Bowser creates 4 clones to try and destroy Mario. This has a neat premise, and it has some good moments to it, like the entire battlefield attacking Clone 1, but I feel more could have been done with the concept. When clones appear, you expect a story to be about them impersonating Mario and people mistaking them for the real Mario, as well as maybe a couple jokes about, "Oh, hey Mario, I just saw you walk by," or something. However, this episode just turns into a robot battle at the end. I don't have an issue with that, but it's just something I noticed. It's funny enough and has good enough action sequences for me to consider it a good, but there was some wasted potential. Episode 32. Crime Time. When Luigi goes to prison, Mario tries to break him out, where they both have to run from the law. Crime Time is the first big Gmod episode, and let me get my thoughts out about Gmod. I personally don't have an issue with it, because we get unique settings that you can't get in-game. Overusing it might be a problem later, but for now it's neat to see all these different locations. As for the episode, oh, it's an absolute classic. As good as it gets for this season. So many memorable scenes and funny moments. The R-Wing scenes, the disguises, Luigi's trial all make for very funny moments. Mario and Luigi also have a good relationship here. It's not early SMG4 where Luigi is Mario's rival. No, Mario wants to help Luigi out. It's nice to see some brotherly love here. And I haven't even talked about the climax. The cop chase sequence is one of my favorite scenes in SMG4, period. All these jokes about cops, about running over pedestrians, the Fox McCloud joke, which I didn't even notice until I watched this episode for this review, all with I'm the Scatman playing in the background. It's ridiculous, it's weird, but it's so damn funny. When I think of great SMG4 episodes, I think of Crime Time. Episode 33. Scatman's Revenge. The ghost of Scatman John wants revenge on Mario for overusing his songs. From one good episode to another, this one is somehow even weirder. All the antics Mario gets himself into, or rather is imposed on him by the ghost, are hilarious. From the crazy overalls to the giant Mario scene to Scatman Syndrome, which made me laugh out loud the first time I saw it, it's the perfect blend of funny and really strange. The plot is clever because it calls attention to and almost satirizes the usage of Scatman John's music in Mario 64 videos. I also enjoyed the ending. It felt kind of nice to have Mario explain to him that people use this music so much because they love it. All that, combined with some bangers throughout the episode, make this another really great one. Episode 34. The Forgotten Door. Mario wants to explore a forgotten door in the castle. So, this is the first mystery-themed episode in SMG4, with Mario trying to find out about this secret door. Now, it's not funny, but that's not a big deal with these story-based episodes. However, the story falls flat too. There's really only two big reasons why, so let's talk about them. First, this story doesn't have a lot of payoff. I understand this is early SMG4 we're talking about, but I expected a bit more than just, guess we'll never know. Actually, it's the bathrooms. It's just not satisfying enough. Also, shouldn't this foreman be a bit more aware of where people are? He led Mario to the hole where Mario implied he'd explore it. It's just too dumb of a reason, and it's not very funny. My big issue with this, however, is that things come up out of complete left field. Time travel just pops up. Mario says to himself the only way he'd be able to access this door is if he travels back in time to when the castle was under construction, and a portal just opens. Out of thin air, behind him. But really, I should be asking why Mario wants to explore this damn thing in the first place. He literally goes from not believing in anything about this story Toad told him to fully believing it and dedicating his whole day to finding this door in absolutely no time. We could have had Mario poke around the castle a bit more, looking for confirmation about this story, talking to characters and whatnot, and then after that he wants to embark on this journey. Maybe, I don't know, move the Peach interaction back in the story a bit? Mario already believes in the door by the time he talks to Peach, so all she does for him is say it's blocked away by concrete. Mario would have had much more reason to explore, and Peach would have contributed more if that scene would have just taken place 2 minutes prior. Maybe Toad saying it could be true would be enough to convince Mario, but he doesn't seem to acknowledge it that much. I have to give this a Scum 64 rating because it's close to being a competent story, but it's organized all wrong. This is just a very disappointing episode. Episode 35, Bloopception. Mario tries to make a blooper. Bloopception is an interesting idea. Mario tries his hand at blooper making, but it's done kind of poorly. There aren't many jokes that land well outside of the air montage, and the story could have been done better. Obviously, Mario wasn't going to make a good blooper. I expected that, but I also expected more from the SMG4 side of the plot. We could have had some more tension with SMG4 at the castle than Mario trying to speed up the editing process, but no, he just appears at the room. It's obviously a meh, but the concept and the opening bits are decent. I like Mario convincing SMG4 that his computer is fucked up. Episode 36, Mission for Peach. Mario has to rescue Peach. This is another boring episode with a few cool ideas sprinkled in. The adventure montage was nice, as well as Mario chasing after that one coin, but everything else just feels like a Scum 64 episode. All Mario does after finding out Peach was kidnapped is look for 1,000,000 coins, go to the mountain, and fight Bowser. The mountain feels like the only part with a lot of effort put into it, since the ending feels super rushed and the coin subplot just really disappears after it happens. There's no really funny moments too, so overall it's just really bland. Episode 37, Castle Jumping, Time Traveling, and Zombies. Mario accidentally travels 10,000 years in the future. So this and the Race for Golden Overalls both have their audio removed by YouTube, presumably for copyright reasons. So that puts me in the weird position of having to review these episodes, going just off what I see, as audio gags aren't here. So let me just say, for this episode and for Race for Golden Overalls, they're obviously going to be lower than if they weren't muted. I'm just reviewing these episodes off of what is available to me. If y'all know of a version that has audio that's archived or whatever, let me know. I might be able to do an actual review later on. But for now, we have Castle Jumping. This is the first episode in which we have what many consider to be actual recolors. Not modded Mario skins to take the place of Luigi or Wario, actual recolors. For this time period, I like them. The more experimental characters at a time where that was the easier method for SMG4. More characters are generally good, and while I and a lot of other people prefer characters that aren't recolors of Mario, it works for its time period. This episode, however, feels very cluttered. We have 3 separate plots, one after the other, and they don't get developed that well. You only have a couple minutes of time to delve into these stories, and that's just not enough time. I have to give this episode a Scum 64, because it's just so messy. The zombies were cool, but again, we just don't get enough time with it. Episode 38, Hall 9000. Mario gets a security system for the castle. Wow, another Season 1 episode where Mario has to sneak into the castle. Except this time with SMG4. I like this episode. We get some nice interactions between Mario and SMG4, plus some funny gags, especially the fake out at the beginning. This time, obviously, there's this security system involved, and that brings some interesting things, but overall, I'd say this is good. Episode 39, Hide and Seek. Mario, Luigi, SMG4, and X play hide and seek. Hide and seek is a fun idea for an episode, but this kind of fails at that. We get some interesting locations like the Return of the Land That Never Was, but other than that, I felt very, very bored throughout so much of this episode. Almost like the Land That Never Was. It was almost a Scum 64, but it does just enough funny stuff to escape that. Hide and Seek just kind of disappears once SMG4 and X go into the canon. After that, it just becomes an exploration episode. It's not interesting, it's not funny. X doesn't even bring much to the table in terms of being a unique character. I'm fairly sure if the hide and seek segments weren't here, it'd definitely be a Scum 64, but for now, it's barely a meh. Episode 40, The Mystery of the Chest. Someone stole Mario's secret stash of mushrooms, and he wants to figure out who did it. A good example of how to do a mystery episode is Mystery of the Chest. We get basically all of the main characters in Season 1 in one place, and everybody tells their part in the story. I love those kinds of episodes where all the characters have their own experiences with the main item of the story. It's very fun to watch because each story affects another in some way. The chest gets moved from place to place, being in the presence of a different person who each takes just a single mushroom. Turns out, technically everybody is guilty here, and that's a really cool revelation in this episode. It's absolutely a good one, and while it could have benefited from more jokes, and the bleeping one goes on for a bit longer than I would have liked, it's still a very enjoyable watching experience. Episode 41, Ouija Disease. When Luigi comes down with an illness, Mario has to find a cure. Jokes about that aside, I didn't feel strongly about this episode either way. It's a meh for me, mostly because the overuse of plot twists. Mario needs to find an herb in the forest? Guess it's on top of the castle now. Mario loses the herb to Dupless? Well, actually, the real thing Merlin wanted was in Mario's pocket all this time. Potion doesn't work and kills Luigi? Don't you know it was a robot all this time? At first it was funny, but then it kinda got stupid. There are really good parts, however. The vomit running gag, the doctor, the forest part, it's really close to being good. Just don't change the plot so much while it's happening. 42. Race for golden overalls. Mario finds a pair of golden overalls, while SMG4 and the gang want them as well. Castle jumping might have still been at least a little meh with its original audio, but I feel even not being able to hear things in this episode doesn't make it not good. Having all these characters look for these overalls is a fun ordeal, and even without audio, it's interesting. Not much to say here, so let's move on. 43. Luigi and the Haunted Castle. Luigi has to explore Peach's haunted castle. I like the focus on Luigi here. It makes for an interesting episode. Plus, seeing Peach's castle empty is really interesting too. I like this episode. It has some funny bits to it. The Boo and his lines are hilarious. Something about just how rude he is, saying, "Okay, you're a fail, you're a disgrace, you should just kill yourself," is so out of nowhere, it's just so funny. The ending is also great too. It's the perfect mix of suspenseful but also silly. Highly recommend this one. Episode 44, Brother Battles. Mario and Luigi settle their disputes in a tournament. This almost feels like a prequel to the War of the Fat Italians miniseries, except it's just between Mario and Luigi. It's cool and all, not much wrong with it, and it has some nice jokes. Good episode. Toad's line right over there was nice too. Episode 46, Toad Gold. Toad gets rich, which gets to his head. I'm doing the Lost Gems trilogy all at the end, so these next few will be out of order. Anyways, we get an interesting idea here, with Toad suddenly being rich. We don't get a lot of episodes where Toad is the main focus of the Oh, it's another Mario and the gang sneak into the castle episode. Wonderful. It doesn't do much with Toad being rich outside of pushing the sneaky plot and the ending gags, of which are nice, but not enough to save this episode from meh. If I recall it correctly, Rich Glitch later on in the series does this kind of episode much better, but for now we just kind of have a derivative episode. Episode 48, Super Hello Kitty Roller Coaster Tea Party 2. Mario wants a new game, so he has his friends help him stay up all night. All-nighter episodes are a favorite of mine, as lots of the comedy comes from the antics the characters do to try and stay awake. This does have those kinds of jokes, but not much else. I found this episode just meh. It really loses steam at the end where Mario just takes a copy from Wario. Not a really memorable episode outside of the concept. Episode 45, The Lost Gems, Part 1. Mario embarks on a multi-part journey to find the missing gems of life. This is the big special of the season, if you can call it that. I'll go over the trilogy as a whole at the end of the Part 3 segment, but for now let's focus on Part 1. It does have its moments like Peanut Butter Jelly Time, which, fun fact, was sung by Snoop Dogg's cousin who killed himself during a police standoff where he took 2 people hostage in a Las Vegas apartment. That fact turned out fun fairly fast. I also enjoyed the boat segment. Good episode, but it could have been much funnier. Nonetheless, it's a nice starting point where we do get a cool plot. Episode 47, The Lost Gems, Part 2. After finding the Aqua Gem, Mario ventures off to look for the Lava Gem. This also had a nice musical segment with some Scatman. I think this is good, mostly because the Pokemon battle was actually done pretty well. Also, I'm a big fan of the My Spine running gag. Outside of the battle, it did feel boring, but it's still good enough. Episode 49, The Lost Gems, Part 3. Mario has to find the third and final gem, the green gem. This is an actually pretty funny episode through and through, so I'll give it a good rating. This time, the gem is in a more familiar place for Mario, and that's really neat. The green screen ROM part was also pretty damn good. I enjoyed the red herring that came from Peach as well, and overall it makes for an enjoyable, if not weird, ending to the season. To summarize the entire trilogy, it was good, but I wouldn't say great. It had its moments, but it wasn't super funny. It had a good plot, but it had boring moments. It was good, but close to meh. And that was every episode of SMG4 Season 1 reviewed. I want to go over some observations I had over the course of watching these episodes. To start, lots of the episodes pre-September 2011 are very, very primitive. Lots of these just focused on these Mario characters going on these stupid plots. Nothing wrong with that, but the quality definitely took a step up when Enter X came onto the scene. That episode had an actually really well done story, as well as some good production. As I noted in my review of that, none of the background music clashed with the in-game music, and we get some cool setting changes like Mario's brain or the recolors. I expected things to be simple, but I didn't expect such a large uptick in quality this early into the series. We also saw something similar with the blooper competition. Next, we had a lot of sneak into the castle plots. Toad Gold, Master of Veil Disguises, Hall 9000. It's not inherently a bad thing, but it's definitely something noticeable. And finally, so many episodes were interesting in terms of the plot, but fell short when it came to being funny. Even some of the best here could have benefited from a couple more good jokes. On to the stats. Out of 49 episodes, there were 34 that were good, 9 that were meh, and 6 that were Scum 64. The meh episodes being Mario's Guide to Defeating Bowser, Mario Quits, Losing Your N64, The Land That Never Was, Bloopception, Hide and Seek, Ouija Disease, Toad Gold, and Super Hello Kitty Roller Coaster Tea Party 2, while the Scum 64s were A Painful Day in the Paper World, Darkness Takes Over, Bowser the Unhappy Fat Turtle, The Forgotten Door, Mission for Peach, and Castle Jumping Time Traveling Zombies. All the good episodes vastly outnumber everything else combined, making up a whole 69% of all the episodes. Meanwhile, both Meh and Scum 64 only take up 18 and 12% respectively. Combined, they aren't even half as much as the good episodes. On to the lists. I'll list my top and bottom 5 for the season. This is subject to change, obviously, but after thinking about it, I'm comfortable with how these rank. Top 5. Number 5, The Mystery of the Chest. It has a neat concept, and the way the stories intertwine is just fascinating. Number 4, Enter X. The first big, serious episode does a lot right, especially an actually threatening antagonist. Number 3, Scatman's Revenge. One of the wilder, more funny episodes present in Season 1. It takes one of the mainstays of Mario 64 bloopers and satirizes it in a really clever way. Number 2, A Day Without Peach. It's simple, crazy fun with Mario and Toad, and it works so well. And number 1, to probably nobody's surprise, Crime Time. It's an absolute classic, and to have an episode this funny and engaging this early on is a good sign for the series at this point. Now we move on to the bottom 5 of the season. Number 5, A Painful Day in the Paper World. It's boring and it doesn't use its settings well enough. Number 4, Mission for Peach. Wasted potential and drags things on for way longer than they need to be. Number 3, Darkness Takes Over. Doesn't do much with the darkness plot, and it loses steam very fast when Mario goes through the portal. Number 2, The Forgotten Door. Sloppy writing and contrived characters bring this episode down so much. And number 1, Bowser the Unhappy Fat Turtle. It's a weird, tonally confused mess of an episode that just doesn't know what to do with itself. Now for the season rating. Obviously, it's a good season, but I wouldn't consider it to be that good. A lot of the good episodes were close to being meh, like the ones earlier in the season and some from the Lost Gems trilogy. And a couple of the mez were really close to being Scum64, like Hide and Seek or The Land That Never Was. The good episodes were good, but they weren't super funny, even some of the really good ones. That's kind of what happens when these episodes are so primitive. Only so much you can do with these simple episodes. Still, it's a good season, and the bad episodes, save for one or two, weren't really that bad, while a decent amount of the good episodes were really good. Although it's boring in some spots, although it's not the funniest in a lot of areas, Season 1 of SMG4 is a solid watch, and with it being the beginning of this whole series, it's a nice place to start off. Thank you for watching my SMG4 Season 1 review. If you have questions about things, feel free to comment down below. If you feel like I've glossed over some parts, keep in mind I can do more in-depth reviews later. I kinda have to keep things brief in these videos. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good one, y'all.